The documents were spread across our kitchen island when I came home that Thursday morning. I had just finished a 12-hour night shift. My feet ached. My scrub smelled like hospital antiseptic and bad coffee. I was 32 years old and I had been a registered nurse for 8 years, and I knew what exhaustion felt like in my bones. But nothing, not one single night shift, not one single difficult patient, not one single moment in that hospital, had prepared me for what I saw on that marble countertop at 7:14 in the morning. My name, signed at the bottom of a loan document for $180,000. Except I had never signed it. Ryan was standing at the kitchen window with his back to me, drinking coffee like it was an ordinary Thursday. He didn't turn around when I dropped my bag. He didn't turn around when I walked to the island. He only turned around when the silence got too loud for him to ignore. He looked at the documents. He looked at me. And then he said the words I will never unhear for the rest of my life. "It's already done, Sarah. There's nothing to prove and nothing to fight. Just accept it and we can move forward like adults." I looked at my name on that signature line. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I picked up the documents, folded them once, and walked upstairs to our bedroom. I heard him call after me. I closed the door. That was a Thursday in November. 6 weeks later, his attorney would stop returning his calls. But I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're listening to this and you want to understand how a woman gets from that kitchen to where I am now, I need to take you back to the beginning. Because none of this happened overnight. It never does. My name is Sarah Miller. I was 32 years old when my husband of 7 years handed me the worst morning of my life without even having the decency to face me while he did it. I am a registered nurse. I work the night shift at Mercy General Hospital on Caldwell Avenue in Cincinnati, Ohio. I have worked that shift for 6 years because the night differential pay is higher, and because Ryan always said he slept better when the house was quiet. I believed that. I believed a lot of things. If you are listening from somewhere out there, from your car, your kitchen, your own difficult morning, please subscribe and leave a comment telling me what city you are in. I want to know how far this story has traveled, because I think someone out there needs to hear it today. Ryan and I met when I was 24 years old at a fundraiser for the hospital where I had just started working. He was 31, tall, and confident in the specific way that men are confident when they have never been seriously challenged. He worked in commercial lending. He wore good suits. He said the right things at the right moments, and I was 24 and I mistook polish for depth. We married 2 years later in a small ceremony at a vineyard outside the city. 43 guests. White roses. My mother cried. His mother, Linda, smiled in every photograph with an expression I could never quite read. At the time I called it elegance. Later I would find a better word for it. We bought a house on Fairview Court in the second year of our marriage. A 4-bedroom colonial with a wraparound porch and a kitchen island I had fallen in love with immediately. We paid $340,000 for it. My salary covered the mortgage most months because Ryan's income, he explained, fluctuated with the market. I understood that. Lending is cyclical. I was not naive about money. I was just trusting about him. We had a golden retriever named Biscuit who slept at the foot of our bed and destroyed exactly one throw pillow every 3 months with the dedication of a professional. We had a Friday night tradition of takeout from a Thai place called Lotus Garden on 5th Street. We had a good life. Or what I understood to be one. I want to be honest about something before I go further. I was not a perfect wife. I worked nights. I slept days. I missed dinners and anniversaries and one birthday because a patient coded and I could not leave. Ryan never said he resented it. He said he understood. He said he was proud of what I did. He said all the right things, and I now understand that a man who always says the right things is a man who has learned that words are cheaper than actions and far more effective at buying time. The first sign came 14 months before that Thursday morning. I noticed it the way you notice a draft in a house. Not all at once. Just a persistent chill you cannot locate no matter how many doors you check. Ryan started taking phone calls in his car. Not occasionally. Always. I would come downstairs after sleeping through the afternoon and his car would be running in the driveway, engine on, him inside with his phone pressed to his ear. When he came in he would say it was a client. He would say lending was complicated right now. He would say the market was difficult and some conversations needed privacy. I believed him the first time. And the second? By the fourth time I filed it somewhere quiet in the back of my mind and told myself I was being paranoid. Then came the laptop. Ryan had always been careless with his laptop. He left it open on the kitchen table, on the couch, on the counter beside the coffee maker. In 7 years of marriage I had never once looked at his screen because I had never once had a reason to. But one evening in September I walked past the kitchen table and saw a name on his screen that stopped me completely. Coastal Bridge Financial. I knew that name. Not because Ryan had mentioned it. Because 2 months earlier one of the nurses I worked with, a woman named Patrice who had been in lending before she retrained, had mentioned Coastal Bridge Financial in a conversation about predatory private lenders. She had called them, and I remembered the exact word she used: aggressive. She said they targeted borrowers who needed money fast and did not want traditional bank documentation. I stood at the kitchen table for 3 seconds looking at that screen. Then Ryan walked in and closed the laptop and said he was reviewing a client file. I smiled. I said, of course. I went upstairs. I did not sleep that afternoon. I lay on top of the covers in my scrubs and I thought about Coastal Bridge Financial and the car calls and the way Ryan had stopped leaving his laptop open. And I told myself it was nothing. I told myself I was tired and that tired people see patterns that are not there. I was a nurse. I understood confirmation bias. I was not going to become a suspicious wife over a company name on a screen. I talked myself out of it completely. That was my mistake. And I knew at the moment I walked into the kitchen that Thursday morning and saw my name on a document I had never touched. But here is what I did not know yet. Here is what I would not understand until 10 days later when I sat in a parking garage at midnight with my phone in my hand and my whole body completely still. Ryan had not acted alone. I want you to hold that thought. Because everything that comes next only makes sense when you understand that the man standing at my kitchen window that Thursday morning was not the architect of what had been done to me. He was just the one who had agreed to carry it out. The architect was someone else entirely. And I had been sharing Sunday dinners with her for 7 years. Let me take you back to that kitchen because I have not finished telling you what happened after I walked upstairs with those documents. I sat on the edge of our bed, my side, the left side, the side I had slept on for 7 years, and I placed the folded papers on my knee and I did not open them for a full 8 minutes. I know it was 8 minutes because I watched the clock on the nightstand. I have a habit of tracking time. Nurses always do. Time is the difference between a patient who makes it and one who does not. Below me I could hear Ryan moving around the kitchen. The sound of him rinsing his coffee cup. The refrigerator opening and closing. The ordinary sounds of a man who believed the situation was already resolved. I opened the documents. They were 41 pages. A commercial loan agreement between Ryan Miller, my husband, and Coastal Bridge Financial LLC, dated 6 weeks earlier, for the amount of $180,000. The listed collateral was our house on Fairview Court. The listed co-borrower was me, Sarah Ann Miller, registered nurse, wife. My signature appeared on page 11, page 27, and page 41. I have a very specific signature. Every nurse does. We sign medication orders, patient charts, incident reports, controlled substance logs. My signature is consistent and distinctive, a looping capital S and underlined through the R, a small period at the end that I added unconsciously sometime in my 2nd year of nursing and never stopped doing. I looked at the signature on page 11. The S was wrong. The R had no underline. There was no period. Someone had signed my name who had seen it perhaps once or twice. Someone who was close enough to have a sample but not close enough to have studied it. Someone who had been in a hurry or who had believed, quite confidently, that I would never look closely enough to notice. That was their first mistake. I refolded the documents. I placed them in the outside pocket of my nursing bag where I kept my spare pens and my hospital ID lanyard. I changed out of my scrubs. I put on jeans and a gray sweater and I went back downstairs. Ryan was still in the kitchen. He turned around when he heard me on the stairs. His expression was the one I had seen in difficult conversations over the years, controlled, prepared, slightly impatient in the way of someone who has rehearsed what comes next and wants to get to it. We should talk about this properly, he said. We will, I said. I need to take Biscuit for a walk first. He looked surprised. I could see him recalculating. He had expected tears or anger or questions. He had not expected a walk. I clipped Biscuit's leash and walked out the front door into the cold November morning, and I did not look back. Biscuit pulled toward the park at the end of Fairview Court the way he always did, and I let him lead because I needed my hands free and my mind completely clear. I had approximately 6 problems, and I needed to rank them in order of urgency the way I rank patient needs during a difficult shift. First things first. Tree. Problem 1. $180,000 had been borrowed in my name against our home without my knowledge or consent. Problem 2. My signature had been forged on a legal document, which was a crime. Problem 3. I did not know where the money had gone or what it had been used for. Problem 4. I did not know if there were other documents I had not seen yet. Problem 5. Ryan was waiting in our kitchen expecting a conversation I was not ready to have. And problem 6, the one I kept returning to as Biscuit sniffed his way around the park, was the question I could not yet answer. Why $180,000? Why now? Why Coastal Bridge Financial specifically? A private lender with no standard documentation requirements, instead of a bank where both borrowers would need to appear in person. The answer to that last question was the one that mattered most. Because the answer told me everything about what Ryan had been planning and how long he had been planning it. A bank would have required me to appear, to show identification, to sign in front of a notary. A private lender like Coastal Bridge, aggressive, fast, documentation light, would accept mailed documents, scan signatures. A co-borrower who never needed to set foot in an office. He had chosen Coastal Bridge specifically because he could forge my signature without me ever needing to be present. That was not a panicked decision. That was a researched one. Biscuit sat down beside a bench and looked at me with the patient, uncomplicated expression of a dog who understood that something was wrong and had decided the best response was simply to stay close. I sat beside him on the cold bench and scratched behind his ears and thought about the name on page 11 of that document and the wrong S and the missing period, and I felt something settle in my chest that was not peace exactly but was the thing that comes just before it. Clarity. He had made a mistake. A specific, documentable, provable mistake. And I was a woman who had spent 8 years in a hospital learning that the difference between a crisis and a catastrophe is almost always what you do in the first hour. I stood up. I looked at the park, the bare November trees, the gray Cincinnati sky. Biscuit looked up at me. Okay, I said to him. Not to Ryan. Not to the situation. To myself. We walked home. Ryan was sitting at the kitchen island when I came back. He had made fresh coffee. He had put out 2 cups. He was performing reasonableness the way he always performed it, carefully, deliberately, with just enough warmth to make the performance convincing. Sarah, he said. Sit down. Let me explain. I unclipped Biscuit's leash. I hung it on the hook by the door. I turned around and I looked at my husband of 7 years and I said 4 words that I could see immediately he had not prepared for. I already called someone. That was not true. Not yet. But it would be true within the hour. And the expression on Ryan Miller's face in that moment, the flash of something behind the controlled blue eyes, the almost imperceptible recalibration, the half-second where the rehearsed version of this conversation collapsed and he had to find a new one. That expression told me everything I needed to know about how afraid he actually was. He should have been more afraid. He had no idea what was coming. I left the house 40 minutes later with 3 things. My nursing bag, which contained the loan documents, my hospital ID, my spare phone charger, and 8 years of the habit of always being prepared for a situation to get worse before it gets better. My personal laptop, which I kept in the bedroom closet and which Ryan had never used and never asked about. And Biscuit, because I was not leaving my dog in a house with a man I no longer trusted, and because Biscuit had looked at Ryan that morning with the specific wariness that dogs show when something in a familiar place has gone wrong. I drove to the parking garage beneath Mercy General Hospital. I had worked in that building for 6 years. I knew every floor, every corner, every camera angle. I parked on level 3 where the signal was poor, and no one came unless they worked nights. I turned off the car. I sat in the driver's seat with Biscuit pressed against my left side and I did the accounting. Our joint checking account held $11,400. I checked it on my phone and saw that it had been $11,400 for 3 weeks, which meant Ryan had not touched it yet. My personal savings account, the one I had maintained since before our marriage in my name alone, held $23,800. The product of 8 years of night shift differentials, and the specific financial caution of a woman who had grown up watching her mother navigate the world without a safety net, and had decided very young that she would always have one. I was not without resources. I was not without options. I was without, at this precise moment, a clear picture of what had actually happened and why. I needed that picture before I did anything else. I opened my personal laptop and I searched for Coastal Bridge Financial LLC. They had a website that was professionally designed and said almost nothing useful. A phone number with the Nevada area code. A contact form. No physical address listed. No names of principals. The kind of website that is built to look legitimate from a distance and does not survive close inspection. I searched their name in the Ohio Secretary of State Business Registry. They were registered as a foreign LLC, incorporated in Nevada, registered to do business in Ohio 14 months ago. The registered agent was a law firm in Columbus that specialized in exactly this kind of anonymous business registration. I searched for litigation involving Coastal Bridge Financial. I found 3 cases in federal court in the past 2 years. All 3 involved borrowers who claimed their signatures had been forged on loan documents. 2 of those cases had been settled confidentially. 1 was still pending. I sat with that information for a moment. Ryan had not found Coastal Bridge Financial by accident. Someone had directed him to a lender with a documented history of participating in fraudulent loan arrangements. Someone who knew what to look for and where to find it. This was the moment I understood that I was not dealing with a husband who had panicked and made a desperate decision. I was dealing with something that had been planned over months by someone who understood how these systems worked. And Ryan, for all his confidence in his good suits and his practiced reasonableness, had never been the one in our marriage who researched things carefully. He was the one who decided things. Someone else had always been the one who researched. I thought about Linda. I put that thought in a specific place in my mind, the place where I put things that are too important to rush, and I moved to the next problem. I needed an attorney. Not a general practice lawyer. A specific kind, someone who handled both family law and financial fraud. I had a name in my phone from an unexpected source. 8 months earlier, a colleague of mine named Donna, a charge nurse who had been through a brutal divorce 2 years prior, had pressed a business card into my hand after I mentioned offhandedly that Ryan and I had been arguing more than usual. She had said, "I'm not saying you'll need her. I'm saying keep the number." The attorney's name was Claire Sutton. Family law. Financial disputes. Board certified. I had kept the card in the back of my phone case without ever thinking about it again until this moment. I called at 8:22 in the morning. Her assistant answered on the second ring. I explained that I needed an urgent consultation regarding forged loan documents and potential financial fraud by a spouse. The assistant put me on hold for 90 seconds. When she came back, she said Miss Sutton had a cancellation at 11 o'clock that morning and could I be there? I said yes. I sat in the parking garage for another 20 minutes and I did something I had not allowed myself to do yet. I thought about what this meant. Not legally. Not financially. Personally. I thought about 7 years. I thought about Fairview Court and the wraparound porch and Lotus Garden on Friday nights, and the way Ryan had looked at me across a vineyard on our wedding day with an expression that I had believed completely. I thought about whether that expression had ever been real or whether it had always been the same performance as this morning's coffee and the 2 careful cups. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that, not because crying would have been wrong, but because what I felt was not grief yet. It was something colder and more specific. The feeling a nurse gets when a situation that seems stable suddenly isn't, and every system in your body switches over to a different mode. Assessment mode. Intervention mode. I had cried for patience. I would cry for this later. Right now I had work to do. Claire Sutton's office was on the 14th floor of a building 6 blocks from the hospital. She was 51 years old, precise in the way that good attorneys are precise, and she had the specific manner of someone who has heard a great many terrible things across a desk and has learned to meet all of them with the same level attention. She reviewed the documents in 9 minutes. She did not speak while she read. When she finished, she placed them on the desk in front of her and looked at me. "The signatures are forged," she said. It was not a question. "Yes. You have evidence of that?" "I have 8 years of my own signature on hospital documents that I can pull within the hour. The variation is significant." She nodded slowly. "Coastal Bridge Financial." She said the name with a particular flatness. I've seen their paperwork before. They have a history of what I would describe as flexible documentation standards. She paused. This is not the first time someone has walked into my office with their name on a coastal bridge loan they did not sign. She asked me to tell her everything. I told her in the same order I had organized it in the parking garage, sequentially without drama, the way I would brief an incoming shift nurse on a complex patient. She took notes without interrupting. When I finished, she set down her pen. First priority, she said, is establishing the paper trail. I need you to pull every bank statement, joint and personal, going back 18 months. I need your hospital employment records showing your shift schedule. If you were working nights on the dates those documents were supposedly signed, that matters enormously. She paused. Were you? I pulled up my schedule on my phone. The documents were dated on 3 separate occasions, a Tuesday, a Thursday, and a Saturday, all in October. I checked my shift records. Tuesday, October 8th. I had worked 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I was on the floor at Mercy General when my signature supposedly appeared on page 11 of a loan document across town. Thursday, October 17th. Same shift. Timestamped medication logs would place me at a patient's bedside at 2 a.m. Saturday, October 26. I had worked a double. 16 hours. My badge swipes in and out of the medication room were logged automatically every time. I looked up from my phone. I was working, I said. All 3 times. Claire allowed herself a very small, very precise smile. Then we have something better than a handwriting dispute, she said. We have time-stamped institutional records placing you in a different location at the exact moment your signature was supposedly collected. That moves this from a civil fraud matter to a potential criminal forgery case. She leaned forward. I need you to do something before we go further. I need you to access your joint account right now and screenshot the current balance and transaction history. Do not move any money. Just document. I logged in. The balance was $11,400 as I had seen that morning. I scrolled through the transactions. Nothing unusual in the past week. But 4 months ago, in July, there had been a transfer out of the joint account for $8,500 to an account I did not recognize. And 3 months ago, $6,200 to the same account. And 2 months ago, $4,800. A total of $19,500 over 3 months. All to the same unknown account number. All on weekdays when I would have been sleeping after night shifts. I showed Claire the screen. She looked at it for a moment. Then she said very quietly, "He's been moving money for months." This was the moment the full picture arrived. Not all at once, pictures like this never arrive all at once. But enough of it. Enough to understand the shape of what had been happening around me, while I worked my night shifts and trusted my husband and slept through the afternoons. The loan was not a desperate act. It was the final step of a plan that had started months earlier. The small transfers out of the joint account were the beginning, testing, building, preparing. Coastal Bridge Financial was the mechanism for the large amount, the one that would put real money somewhere Ryan controlled before he did whatever came next. And whatever came next, I understood with cold and absolute certainty, involved me not being in the picture. I had one more question before I left Claire's office that day. I asked it carefully because I already suspected the answer and I needed to hear it confirmed. Is there any way to find out where the $180,000 went? Claire looked at me steadily. Discovery will get us the Coastal Bridge disbursement records. It will tell us exactly which account received the funds. She paused. Do you have a theory? I thought about Linda Miller. 61 years old. Silver blonde hair in a precise bob. Hands always folded. Eyes that tracked everything. A woman who had spent her son's entire life making his decisions feel like his own ideas. I have the beginning of one, I said. Claire nodded. Hold on to it. Don't act on it yet. Document first. I left her office at 12:45 with a folder of intake paperwork, a list of exactly what I needed to pull together, and something I had not expected to feel walking out of an attorney's office for the first time in my life. Steadiness. Not happiness. Not confidence. Steadiness. The specific feeling of a nurse who has assessed a situation, identified the critical issues, and begun the intervention. The feeling of someone who knows which walls will hold. I called Donna from the parking garage. She answered on the 3rd ring. I told her in 3 sentences what had happened. There was a pause. "Where are you sleeping tonight?" she said. That was all she asked. That was the only thing that mattered to her in that moment. "Where are you sleeping?" "I don't know yet." "You're sleeping at my place," she said. "Biscuit too. Come after your shift." I held the phone against my ear in that parking garage, and I felt something move through me that I did not have the words for at the time. Later I would understand it was the specific relief of discovering that when your life comes apart, not everything falls. Some things hold. People, if you have chosen them carefully, hold. "Thank you," I said. "Don't thank me," she said. "Just document everything." I already was. But I did not know yet what I was about to find. I did not know about the second folder. The one that had nothing to do with Coastal Bridge Financial. The one that would change the shape of everything I thought I understood about what had been done to me and why. That folder was sitting in a filing cabinet in Ryan's home office. And I had exactly one opportunity to get to it before he realized what I was looking for. I went back to the house on Fairview Court at 3 p.m. that afternoon. Ryan's car was not in the driveway. I did not know where he was and I did not spend time wondering. I had approximately 2 hours before he typically returned and I intended to use every minute of them. I went directly to his home office. It was a room I rarely entered. Not because I had been told not to, but because it had always been his space in the way that certain rooms in a long marriage become someone's space without any discussion. His desk. His filing cabinet. His shelves of lending manuals and financial regulation books that he consulted perhaps twice a year. The filing cabinet was locked. It had always been locked. I had never thought about that before. I thought about it now. I am a nurse. I am not a person who breaks locks. But I am a person who knows where things are kept in a shared house because I am the one who has maintained that house for 7 years. And I knew that Ryan kept a small key on the same ring as his gym locker key in the drawer of his nightstand because I had seen it there a dozen times without ever registering what it opened. The key fit. The filing cabinet had 4 drawers. The top 2 contained what I expected: client files, lending documents, tax records organized by year in the specific way of someone who wants to appear organized but is not truly meticulous. The 3rd drawer contained personal financial documents, insurance policies, our mortgage paperwork, the deed to Fairview Court. I opened the 4th drawer. It took me a moment to understand what I was looking at. The drawer contained a single manila folder, thick with documents, held closed with a rubber band. On the tab, written in Ryan's handwriting, was a single word: transition. I put on the latex gloves I had brought from my nursing bag, habit, always habit, and I opened the folder. The first document was a lease agreement. A 2-bedroom apartment on Harborview Drive in Portland, Oregon. Signed by Ryan Miller. Start date: February 1st, 10 weeks from now. Monthly rent: $3,400. Security deposit paid in full. Portland, Oregon. Where we had never been together. Where we had no connections. Where Ryan had apparently decided he was going next. The second document was a bank statement for an account I had never seen before. A personal account in Ryan's name only at a bank in Nevada. The current balance was $194,000. I did not move for a long moment. $194,000. The loan had been for $180,000. The additional $14,000 had come from somewhere else, the joint account transfers, I realized. The $19,500 minus expenses, minus whatever he had spent in the months of preparation. Everything was in that account. Everything he had taken. Everything he had planned to leave with. The third document was a printed email thread between Ryan and a woman named Ashley Tran. The emails went back 9 months. I will not describe their content in detail because some things do not need to be said aloud to be understood. What I will say is that Ashley Tran lived in Portland, Oregon, and that Ryan had been sending her $2,000 a month for the past 6 months from an account I had never known existed, and that the most recent email, dated 4 days ago, said only, "Almost done. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks." I photographed every document with my phone. I replaced the folder exactly as I had found it. Rubber band in the same position, tab facing the same direction. I locked the cabinet. I returned the key to Ryan's nightstand drawer. I walked out of that room and down the stairs and into the kitchen, and I stood at the kitchen island where those loan documents had been waiting for me that morning, and I breathed. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. The way I breathe when a patient is crashing and I need my hands to be completely steady. He had been planning this for 9 months. The account in Nevada. The apartment in Portland. The woman who had been receiving $2,000 a month. The loan through Coastal Bridge Financial that would leave me holding $180,000 of debt against our house, while he disappeared to the other side of the country with nearly $200,000 in a personal account I had never known existed. 2 more weeks. I called Claire Sutton from my car. I told her what I had found. She was quiet for a moment. "Are the photographs clear?" she said. "Yes. Send them to me now. All of them." A pause. "Sarah, I need you to listen carefully. Do not confront him. Do not let him know what you found. Can you do that?" I thought about walking back into that house and sitting across a kitchen island from a man who had spent 9 months planning to leave me with debt and disappear. "Yes," I said. "I can do that." "Good. We're filing for an emergency asset freeze first thing tomorrow morning. If we move fast enough, we can freeze that Nevada account before he has any idea we know it exists." I sent her the photographs. All 37 of them. Then I drove to Donna's apartment and I sat at her kitchen table while she made pasta and I told her everything. She listened without interrupting, the specific listening of someone who has been through something and knows that what a person in crisis needs first is not advice but simply to be heard. When I finished, she sat down across from me. "He thought you'd be too tired to look closely," she said. "Yes. He doesn't know nurses very well." Despite everything, I almost smiled. I worked my shift that night. 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I administered medications and checked vitals and responded to 2 call lights simultaneously at 3 a.m. and wrote detailed notes in patient charts with my specific and distinctive signature. The looping S, the underlined R, the small period at the end. I worked because my patients needed me, and because there is a specific dignity in continuing to do your work well when everything outside of it is falling apart. I had learned that from 8 years of night shifts. The work is always there. The work does not ask what is happening in your life. The work simply asks you to show up. At 6:15 a.m., 15 minutes before the end of my shift, my phone buzzed with a message from Claire. "Emergency freeze granted. Nevada account locked as of 6 a.m. I stood in the medication room on the 3rd floor of Mercy General Hospital and read that message twice. Then I locked the medication cart, finished my notes, gave my handoff report to the incoming nurse, and walked out into the December morning. Ryan called at 8:47 a.m. I was in the parking garage. I watched his name on my screen until it stopped. He called again at 9:03 a.m. I let that one go too. At 9:18 a.m. he sent a text message. It said, "We need to talk. Something has happened with an account. Call me. Something has happened with an account." I read it 3 times. I forwarded it to Claire. Then I turned off my phone and drove to Donna's apartment and slept for 6 hours for the first time in what felt like weeks. The escalation began 4 days later. Ryan came to Donna's apartment building. He did not know which unit was hers, but he stood in the lobby and called my phone 17 times between 7 p.m. and 9 p.m. on a Tuesday evening. I know it was 17 because I counted. I did not answer. I forwarded the call log to Claire. Then came Linda. I had been expecting her. In the way that you expect weather when you can feel the pressure changing. Not a surprise, just an inevitability arriving on its own schedule. She called me on a Wednesday morning. Her voice was warm and measured and carried the specific texture of a woman who has spent 60 years perfecting the performance of reasonableness. "Sarah," she said, "I think we should meet. Just the 2 of us. I want to help." I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop on Madison Avenue. I wore my hospital ID clipped to my jacket because I wanted her to see it. I arrived 7 minutes early and I set my phone on the table with the recording application running before she walked through the door. Recording is legal in Ohio with one-party consent. I had confirmed that with Claire the previous day. Linda arrived carrying a small paper bag from a bakery. Inside were 2 croissants wrapped in parchment. She set the bag on the table between us and sat down and looked at me with an expression of such practiced warmth that for one disorienting moment I almost felt the old instinct. The 7-year instinct to accept her at face value. "I'm so sorry about all of this," she said. "Ryan has made terrible decisions. I want you to know that I told him so." I wrapped both hands around my coffee cup and said nothing. He's not a bad person, she continued. He's a person who panicked. The business pressure, the financial stress. I think he just made choices he can't undo, and he doesn't know how to face them. She paused. I think there is a way through this that doesn't have to destroy both of you. What way is that? I said. The legal situation, the loan, the account. I think if you were willing to step back from the aggressive approach, Ryan would be willing to negotiate. Privately. Without attorneys making everything more complicated and more expensive than it needs to be. She tilted her head slightly. You've always been practical, Sarah. That's something I've always admired about you. There it was. Dressed in a compliment. Wrapped in warmth. The ask underneath the bakery bag and the soft voice. Drop the legal case. Negotiate privately. Let Ryan keep control of the process. Let them keep control of the process. I looked at Linda Miller across that coffee shop table. 61 years old. Silver blonde hair. Hands folded. Eyes that missed nothing. A woman who had found Coastal Bridge Financial for her son. Who had researched predatory lenders with flexible documentation standards. Who had known about the Portland apartment and the Nevada account and the woman named Ashley Tran, and had said nothing to me across 7 years of Sunday dinners. Linda, I said. Who found Coastal Bridge Financial? A half second. The warmth flickered. Just for a moment. Just long enough. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. She reset. The warmth returned. Sarah. I'm trying to help you both. You researched the lender, I said. Ryan doesn't research things. He decides things. You research things. You found a lender with a history of forged documentation, and you told him where to go and how to structure it, so I would never need to appear in person. I kept my voice completely level. How long have you been planning this? Linda was quiet for 4 seconds. I counted. You're upset, she said finally. That's understandable. I have your son's phone records, I said. This was not entirely true. Claire had subpoenaed them and we were waiting. But Linda did not know what we had and did not have. I have the email thread with Ashley Tran. I have the lease on the Portland apartment and I have the balance of the Nevada account as of the date the freeze was placed. I picked up my coffee cup. I have 37 photographs of a folder labeled transition. Something crossed her face then. Something that was not warmth and was not calculation. Something older and more unguarded. For just a moment I saw the woman underneath the performance and she was afraid. Good. Fear is useful information. Tell Ryan, I said, that the answer is no. To the private negotiation, and to anything else that comes through an unofficial channel. I stood. I picked up my phone from the table, still recording. And Linda, if anyone contacts my employer, my colleagues, my patients' families, or anyone connected to my professional life, Claire Sutton will have a harassment motion filed before the end of the business day. I left the croissants on the table. I walked out into the December morning and I sat in my car for 3 minutes with my hands on the wheel. They were completely steady. My breathing was completely steady. But underneath the steadiness was something that I will be honest about because I think it matters to be honest about this part. I was afraid. Not of Linda exactly. Not of Ryan. I was afraid of the size of what I was inside. The Nevada account was frozen but Ryan still had access to resources I didn't know about. Linda had connections I could not map. I was a nurse living in my colleague's spare room with my dog and a nursing bag and 37 photographs on my phone, and I was going up against 2 people who had spent 9 months building something designed specifically to leave me with nothing. There is a version of yourself in moments like this who looks at the situation and thinks, maybe this is enough. Maybe I take what I can and I walk away and I rebuild quietly somewhere, and I never have to sit across a table from Linda Miller again. I sat with that version of myself for a long time in that car. And then I thought about my signature. The looping S. The underlined R. The small period at the end. My signature on 8 years of patient charts. My name on medication orders and incident reports and controlled substance logs that were time-stamped and witnessed and irrefutable. Someone had forged that signature. Had looked at it carefully enough to attempt it and not carefully enough to replicate it. Had believed that I would not look closely. Had believed that a tired night shift nurse coming home at 7 a.m. would see her name on a document and accept it because that is what people do when they are exhausted and trusting, and have spent 7 years believing in the person across the kitchen island. They had been wrong about what I would do. I started the car. The deposition was scheduled for a Thursday morning in January. Claire had filed for full financial discovery 3 weeks earlier. Bank records, loan documentation, email communications, phone records going back 24 months. Ryan's attorney, a man named Jeffrey Pace who had the careful reassurance of someone paid to seem reasonable, had objected to most of it. The judge had overruled almost all of his objections. Ryan arrived with Jeffrey Pace at exactly 9 a.m. He wore the charcoal gray suit, the same one he had been wearing in my mind since that Thursday morning in November, though of course this was a different day and possibly a different suit. He sat across the conference table and did not look at me. I looked at him steadily. I had no reason not to. Claire opened with the hospital records. She placed them on the table in a neat stack: badge swipe logs, medication administration records, time-stamped nursing notes from 3 separate shifts on the 3 dates my signature had supposedly been collected by Coastal Bridge Financial. On Tuesday, October 8th at 11:42 p.m., Claire said, your wife administered medication to a patient on the 3rd floor of Mercy General Hospital. Her badge swipe places her entering the medication room at 11:39 p.m. The administration log shows her signature at 11:43 p.m. She placed the document in front of Ryan. This is the same evening that her signature appears on page 11 of the Coastal Bridge loan agreement. Can you explain that? Jeffrey Pace put a hand on Ryan's arm. Ryan said he could not explain it. Claire moved to the second document. Then the third. Each timestamp. Each badge swipe. Each nursing note with its distinctive signature. The looping S, the underlined R, the small careful period at the end. Then she placed the loan documents beside the hospital records, and she did not say anything for a moment. She simply let the 2 signatures sit side by side on the conference table, where everyone in the room could see them. Ryan looked at the documents. Something happened in his face that I had seen happen in the faces of patients receiving difficult news. The moment when the information being received is too large for the existing understanding of the situation and everything has to be reorganized around it. Jeffrey Pace was writing something on his legal pad very quickly. Claire opened the second folder. Mr. Miller, she said, we have obtained records for an account held in your name at Silver State Bank in Nevada. Can you tell me when you opened that account? Ryan looked at Jeffrey. You can answer, Jeffrey said quietly. Last year, Ryan said. Can you be more specific? A pause. March. March of this year. And the current balance of that account as of the date the freeze was placed. Another pause. Longer. I'd have to check. We have the records, Claire said pleasantly. She placed them on the table. $194,312. Does that sound correct? Ryan said nothing. Claire placed the lease agreement for the Portland apartment on the table. Then the printed email thread. She did not narrate them. She simply placed them where he could see them, one after another, with the methodical patience of someone who has been building toward this moment for 8 weeks, and is in no hurry now that it has arrived. She placed the transition folder last. Ryan looked at his name on the tab in his own handwriting. Something in his posture changed in the specific way of a structure shifting when a load-bearing element gives way. Not dramatic. Not sudden. Just a settling. A quiet collapse inward. He looked up. His eyes found mine across the table for the first time that morning. I held his gaze. I did not look away. I did not offer him anything. Not anger, not grief, not the satisfaction of seeing me affected. I simply looked at him the way I look at a patient who needs to understand that the diagnosis is real and the time for hoping otherwise has passed. He looked away first. Jeffrey Pace requested a 15-minute break. Claire agreed. In the hallway outside the conference room she stood beside me and said very quietly, without any particular drama, "They will call us before end of day." She was right. Jeffrey Pace called at 4:47 p.m. Not to argue. Not to threaten. To ask what it would take to settle. That told me everything about how the deposition had landed on their side of the table. Claire called me that evening at 6 p.m. I was at Donna's kitchen table eating soup I had not tasted and reading the same paragraph of a novel 4 times without absorbing a single word. My phone buzzed and I picked it up and Claire's voice was measured and precise, and underneath the precision was something that in another person might have been described as satisfaction. "Jeffrey Pace wants to settle," she said. Quickly and quietly. How quickly? He used the word immediately. I set down my spoon. Outside Donna's window, the December sky had gone completely dark, and the street lights were coming on one by one along the block. Biscuit was asleep on the floor beside my chair with his chin resting on my foot. What are they offering? Claire walked me through it. Ryan would assume sole responsibility for the coastal bridge loan. All $180,000. It would be removed from my name entirely, and any impact on my credit would be corrected within 60 days. The Nevada account, all $194,000, would be subject to equitable division as a marital asset. Ryan's attorney was proposing a 60-40 split in my favor, $116,000 to me, $78,000 to Ryan. The house on Fairview Court would be sold. Given that the coastal bridge loan was secured against it, the sale needed to happen. After the mortgage was settled, I would receive 65% of the remaining equity, based on current market value that was approximately $67,000. My retirement accounts remained mine entirely. Ryan's retirement accounts remained his. My personal savings account, the $23,800 I had built over 8 years of night shift differentials, was established as separate property and was not subject to division. There would be no non-disclosure agreement. I would sign nothing that prevented me from telling this story. Claire paused. There's one more thing. Ryan's attorney has indicated that Ryan is prepared to provide a sworn statement to the Ohio State Bar Association, acknowledging that Linda Miller identified and recommended Coastal Bridge Financial to him and assisted in structuring the loan transaction. I was quiet for a moment. He's giving her up, I said. He's protecting himself from a criminal forgery charge, Claire said. Yes. As part of that, he's prepared to be very specific about his mother's role. I thought about Linda Miller. The bakery bag. The croissants still sitting on the table when I walked out. The warmth that was not warmth. The hands always folded. The eyes that tracked everything. What happens to her? That's a matter for the Bar Association and potentially the county prosecutor, Claire said. It's no longer your case to manage. But the sworn statement becomes part of the record. I looked out Donna's window at the December street. A car passed slowly. Someone was walking a small dog on the opposite sidewalk, bundled against the cold, breath visible in the night air. Is this everything we argued for? I asked. The Nevada account split is slightly below what we might have achieved at trial, Claire said honestly. But trial means 6 more months of litigation and costs and uncertainty. What you have here is full removal from the fraudulent loan, full credit correction, the majority of the marital assets, and your voice intact. She paused. Sarah, this is a good settlement. It's better than good. I thought about November. The documents on the kitchen island. My name in someone else's handwriting. Ryan at the window with his back to me, drinking coffee, waiting for me to accept what he had decided. I thought about the small period at the end of my signature. The details so specific, so mine, that it had undone everything they had tried to build. Take it, I said. The settlement was signed on a Friday morning in January in Claire's conference room on the 14th floor. I arrived 12 minutes early. Ryan's paperwork was handled by Jeffrey Pace in a separate room. The documents moved between floors by courier, which felt right, a physical separation that matched the legal one. When the final page was in front of me, I held the pen for a moment. I was not performing anything. There was no audience. Claire was reviewing her copy and her paralegal was timestamping pages, and the moment was simply mine. So I was honest in it. I thought about Ryan standing at the kitchen window on a November morning saying, "It's already done, Sarah. There's nothing to prove and nothing to fight." He had believed that so completely. He had been so certain that a tired woman coming off a night shift would look at her forged name on a document and accept it. Had been so certain that exhaustion and trust could be counted on to do the work that common sense would not. He had made one significant error. He had not understood what kind of tired I was. He had seen the scrubs and the hospital ID and the shadows under my eyes, and he had seen a woman worn down by night shifts. He had not seen what 8 years of night shifts actually builds in a person. The specific unbreakable steadiness of someone who has learned to function at full capacity when everything in them wants to stop. I signed every page. My signature was exactly what it had always been. The looping S. The underlined R. The small period at the end. Mine. Completely and provably mine. Claire called me that evening to confirm it was complete. "It's done," she said. "Thank you," I said. I meant it more than I had words for. The credit correction came through in 43 days. I know because I checked every morning. On the 43rd day my credit report showed no trace of the coastal bridge loan. It was as if it had never existed. Except that it had, and I had the settlement documents to prove it, and I intended to keep them for the rest of my life. Ryan moved to Portland in February. I know this not because I tracked him but because Donna mentioned seeing his name on a forwarding address notice that came to the hospital for a piece of mail that had been incorrectly sent there. Portland, Oregon. Harbor View Drive. The apartment he had signed for in the transition folder. I felt nothing particular about that. Not satisfaction. Not grief. The logical conclusion of a plan that had failed arriving at its destination without me in it. Linda Miller's case was referred to the Ohio State Bar Association in March. I did not follow the proceedings closely. Claire kept me informed in brief summaries. The sworn statement had been detailed and damaging. The Bar Association was taking it seriously. What came of it was Linda's matter to manage. I had enough of my own. I bought a house in April. Smaller than Fairview Court. A 2-bedroom Craftsman on Elm Street in the Northside neighborhood. 6 blocks from a park where Biscuit could run without a leash in the mornings. It had original hardwood floors and a kitchen with a window over the sink that faced east, so that every morning the light came in at the exact angle that made a cup of coffee feel like a decision rather than a habit. I painted the second bedroom a deep sage green. Not because I needed a second bedroom for anything specific but because the color made the room feel like something was growing in it and I wanted that feeling in my house. I stood at the kitchen sink on my first morning there with coffee and the early April light and I breathed in the specific way I breathe at the end of a long shift when the worst of it is over and the next shift has not yet begun. The space between. My credit score reached its previous number in May. I noted it the way I note a patient's vitals returning to baseline, with the satisfaction of someone for whom normal is not ordinary but is instead the result of careful and sustained work. Donna got engaged in June. I was there when her partner proposed at the restaurant where they had their first date and Biscuit somehow ended up in the photograph because I had brought him on the walk beforehand, and he is very large and very present and impossible to crop out. She said she would not crop him out. She said he was family. I was promoted to charge nurse on my unit in September. It was a role I had been the informal version of for 2 years. The title and the accompanying salary made something official that had already been true. My nurse manager said in the meeting that she had always known I could handle pressure. She did not know the specific kind of pressure I had been handling for the past year. She did not need to. One evening in October I was sitting on my back porch on Elm Street with a glass of wine watching Biscuit investigate the yard with the dedicated thoroughness he applies to all investigations when my phone buzzed with a message from a number I did not recognize. It was a short message. Said, "I heard what happened. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I hope you're okay. Rachel." Ryan's younger sister. Who had been kind to me at family events in the distant and careful way of someone who loves her brother but has spent a lifetime watching what he is capable of. Who had never said anything directly and who I had understood never would. I looked at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. "I'm okay. Actually okay. Thank you for saying so." She responded with a single word, "Good." I put my phone down and looked at the yard. Biscuit had found something of great interest near the fence and was examining it with his entire body. The October evening was cool and clear and the kind of quiet that is different from empty. The kind of quiet that means something has settled. I thought about that morning in November. The kitchen island. The documents. My forged name in someone else's handwriting. Ryan at the window saying, "It's already done. There's nothing to prove." He had said I had nothing to fight. He had not accounted for 8 years of signatures. He had not accounted for time-stamped medication logs and badge swipe records and the specific and irrefutable paper trail of a woman who shows up and does her work and signs her name the same way every single time. He had not accounted for me knowing exactly what my signature looked like. That was the detail that undid everything they had built. One small period at the end of a name. A habit so automatic I had never once thought about it. The kind of thing you only notice when it is missing. The people who try to take from you are always counting on one thing. That you will not look closely. That you will be too tired, too trusting, Too overwhelmed to examine what is in front of you with the attention it deserves. Look closely. Always. At the documents, at the details, at the small things that seem unimportant until they are the only things that matter. Know your own signature. Know it so well that no one else can replicate it. Know what is yours so completely that anyone who tries to claim otherwise has already lost. What would you have done, sitting at that kitchen island at 7 a.m. after a 12-hour night shift, looking at your name on a document you had never seen before? I would genuinely like to know. Leave me a comment. Tell me where you are listening from. Tell me what you would have done. And if this story stayed with you, if some part of it felt familiar or important or like something you needed to hear, please subscribe. Share it with someone who might need it. There are more stories. There are always more. Thank you for listening.